So, let's get started with that.
Favorite
This is.
video game lore?
Oh, actually, first, I should probably tell. This is the Nameless podcast, and I don't want to offend anyone, but my favorite video game lore probably got to be the Call of Duty Black Ops series.
Dude.
Should I go a little more in depth with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I know Black Ops 3 a tiny bit, but not the rest of them.
So, the
Oh.
first Call of Duty game I probably played was, Oh, by the way, I don't want to get too political this stream because, well, I told kids in school about my podcast, and now I don't really want to be seen as an overt nationalist or a mega racist at school. So, you know,
Bye, Nathan.
he'll probably rejoin in a second. I don't want to be seen as an overt nationalist or...
This is not the fucking content I came for.
That was unnecessary.
I thought this was supposed to be a serious podcast.
Yes. No, it's not, dude.
Yeah. The point is, I'm just kind of like, just said, I'm not going to get political this podcast, but next podcast, oh, yes, I will.
Oh, yeah.
But the reason it's my favorite video game lore is because everywhere from Call of Duty World at War to Call of Duty Black Ops 3's campaign fits. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 didn't have a campaign. They fucking turned it out for Blackout. And yeah. And if you start with... So let's start with Black Ops 1. Very simple campaign. They're talking about the Cold War in the 60s. And essentially Nova 6-9. Sleeper agents. It's very cool. They're acknowledging all these conspiracy theory stuff, and it's awesome. And the person you play as is suspected of having killed JFK. It's really fucking cool. I'm just going over this super quickly, like just a really quick basis over how the story goes. Black Ops 2 takes place over like 60 years in the future. Hello, you're no longer in the 60s, you're in the 80s, and you're in the 2020s. 2025, you play as the son of said assassin. Well, suspected assassin. It was really cool. And one thing that's really cool about Black Ops 2 is there's more than one ending. There's endings where you kill the father of the main character you play as. He lives. The antagonist goes to jail. The antagonist gets free, and the antagonist dies. A lot of different endings. Just about every single thing you do in the story affects it. It's really cool. How about you, Mason?
My favorite video game lore, I would say, is from The Last of Us.
Not surprising.
Would you like me to elaborate?
Of course.
Alright. So, in The Last of Us, the infected is this spore that essentially evolved to start infecting humans instead of insects.
So spore is in like that asexual reproduction shit?
Yeah.
Oh god damn
it. And it infects basically the entirety of America. And there are certain government facilities that are kept locked down essentially, that are very, very strict. There is the Fireflies, which are essentially rebellious toward the military, and they are looking for a cure for the virus. And in The Last of Us, the first game, you are supposed to essentially help the Fireflies by escorting a person who can be used to help cure them. Like, find a cure. It's like, 'cause something special about them makes them immune to the infected.
Okay,
And
that's it.
what?
Sorry, I just had to say something. Where's Nathan? Nathan has to get back in the party super quickly before I can say this for real. Nathan's not online. I think his internet cut out for a second. Let me send him a call. Give me a moment and call him. Son of a bitch didn't pick up. This is really awkward. But you know what? I'm fine with that. Awkwardness. Fucking amazing. You know, great thing about awkwardness is it's not permanent. Awkwardness is it's that brief moment of silence where nobody's talking and you need something to break the ice. It's that it's that moment in the club where the music's not playing and you don't know whether to dance or stop. It's that moment when you farted and everybody heard it but nobody wants to say something. Awkwardness is everywhere. But you know what? What's so bad about things being awkward? It's just a natural thing that happens.
Awkwardness usually leads to embarrassment depending on the reason the awkwardness was caused.
Usually leads to embarrassment.
Usually. It really depends on the way it is caused. And it is usually only natural for humans to feel embarrassed, especially if they're the ones that cause that awkwardness.
Okay. Embarrassment's a natural feeling. You shouldn't feel embarrassed. Well, yeah, you should feel embarrassed because,
Yeah.
as I just said, it's a natural feeling. You know, I'm not enjoying this idea. I think, I said I wouldn't get controversial this stream. Fuck that. Let's get controversial.
Alright.
So,
Well, I've been waiting for it.
let's start.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think systematic racism exists.
Oh.
And when I say that, I don't mean I don't think racism exists. I don't want people to take that out of context. I just don't think systematic racism is as big a deal as people make it out to be. I don't think.
Why are we talking about this now?
Well, I think we're talking about this now because why the hell not? Mason, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't really put much thought into that, really, as I feel it really doesn't affect him, you know?
Well, you're Polynesian, Mason.
Well, Filipino, but...
Mason. I'm not racist, but there's literally no fucking difference.
I believe
There's a geographical difference, but there's no genetical difference.
No genetical, but I believe there is some cultural difference. And that is essentially
that can
what
fall
defines...
under geographical. That can fall under geographical. That's besides the point. That's besides the point. You are a person of color. So, apparently. But, like, I think that when people are like, systematic racism. Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's like, well, yeah, people are racist. But I don't think that's
Yeah,
gonna
if there's a difference, people are going to complain about that difference because people don't like the difference.
But you see, the thing is, I don't quite frankly think, because like, let's be honest here. How many black teachers do you have, Mason?
Mm,
0, I think. Right? Because
I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think there's
okay,
actually a whole
how
lot of.
many? Well, to be fair, you also live in Coopville. There's no fucking people in Coopville.
That's true.
Where I live, I have a few different teachers. Uh, all, pretty much. I have teachers, and the reason they're and to be systematic racism doesn't exist, but well, it does exist, but it's not a big deal. Like, let's talk about this for a second here. In most places in the United States, I'm not going to speak for any place but the United States because, quite frankly, I live in the United States. I'm not going to be like in Canada, systematic racism doesn't exist. I don't know about Canada. I don't live in Canada. I've never lived in Canada. I am not a French Canadian. But the United States, no. Especially in the western states where it's a little more liberal. More towards the southeast, that's where things might get a little tricky. Like Georgia, I'm not gonna say anything for Georgia. It probably exists in Georgia. But if you're living in Washington and you're a person of color and your excuse for not having a good job is racism, systematically, that can apply for some places, but that cannot be the reason you don't have a job. You can't say they're racist and I just can't get a job. No. You can get a job. If one place doesn't apply for you, good. Okay, that's fine. Go to another place. So, let's get some sources in here. Let's get some sources in here. Because, I don't want to start making these blind claims without addressing some straight up facts. So, keep my non-existent audience entertained for a moment here. Mason, please.
Okay. Like what? Sing a song?
You go ahead, man.
I can't think of any songs.
Sing any song. Sing E-I-E-I-O.
Who is that? Is that you?
Mr. Magoo.
So the coronavirus, it's everywhere now.
What is your favorite video game lore?
Mr. Magoo.
Do I get to be in your podcast?
Oh, the podcast is going right now, Eric.
Oh. I'm in your podcast.
And your mic is still on, Michael.
I know it's on. I'm leaving it on purpose.
Why? Why?
Because I enjoy
Are
awkwardness.
we up here on purpose?
No.
No,
Right.
sure.
Oh, okay. I'll see you later.
Okay. People of color, John. Okay, here's a good one. So let's take into account that let's start with black people. Black people make up 13% of the population of the United States, 40% of the crime rate, but yet again, even though they take up only 13% of the population, which is a lot, which actually makes sense because they make up 1 out of 8 African Americans are in the labor force. That makes sense. Well, no, it doesn't, but think about it. If black people make up 40% of the crime rate, logically 1 in 8 of them are gonna be in the labor force.
40% of
Violent crime rate.
No, 40% of violent crime rate, that was, how do I say this? That was, blah, 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 reported.
Yeah. Your point?
Much like how, like, rape cases, there is that
Well, okay, you see the thing with
percentage
rape
that is
cases.
true, percentage that is false.
Okay, so one thing that really annoys me about rape cases is when people are like, when people try and use the statistic that it is proven that only
Yeah.
2% of women are lying. That is not technically wrong, but as twisting the words to a point that it's almost a completely different fact. That's not true.
Mhm.
So here's what it is. So, let me put this into perspective for you. Imagine a bar. By that I mean actual bar, like not like a bar where you get drinks. Like in a bar graph, you have a bar. So imagine 80% of that bar, the middle section, is colored gray, as in we have no idea what's going on with that bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, just imagine that, and imagine 10% on one side, 10% on the other. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The statistic is that 2 to 10% of all rape cases are proven that the woman isn't lying. It's also that 2 to 10% of rape cases are proven that the woman isn't lying. So
Not
is
not
and
just
isn't.
women. There's also some men rape cases.
Yeah. Well, citizens in general. So 2
Yeah,
to 10%.
citizens.
So the statistic is 2 to 10% aren't lying, and 2 to 10% are lying. So first of all, don't just say 2% because 2 to 10%. Those numbers are close, but not that close that you can just say,
Yeah.
just say it's 2. That 80%, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So don't say 2% of women are proven to be lying. Therefore, oh yeah. yeah. Because there's an 80% gap we have no idea of. So you can't just assume the other 98% of them telling the truth. No, we have no fucking idea.
I would say it would be more accurate to say up to 10% of people are lying and up to 10% of people are telling the truth.
You can't even really say that because there's 80% unaccounted for.
Mm-hmm. And then there's that unknown, and there's a lot of people that assume that unknown, oh, this must be this, or this must be that. Because with rape cases, it is very, very difficult to tell most of the time without reliable witnesses and reliable sources, you know?
Yeah.
Like, actual hard evidence.
So, yeah.
Like, apparently, back, like, while there was, like, a huge, like, black and white diversity and stuff like that, anyone can basically say, oh, I got raped by a black person, and they would go to prison, essentially.
Yeah.
Even though there was no evidence. Nowadays, they find more evidence, and that doesn't happen anymore. Or, I should say, not as much, and to basically anyone at this point in time. But it's still like, there's that, do we trust him or no? Like, you don't know for a fact if this happened.
Yeah, sorry, I'm pulling up my source just so that way I can be 100% sure about the whole 2 to 10%. No, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
He's not actually dead.
No. Okay, so so I'm getting out my. So my first is journals.sagepub.com. So the prevalence, false allegations are proven to be between 2 and 10%, and same goes for, yeah, and that means that there's good, that other percentage at best is 98%. We're just gonna assume that means they're telling the truth, and those other 98%. We don't know. We have no fucking idea. My second source is archives.org. Web.archive.org. Surprisingly reliable source. Yeah. So, ooh. Another thing is, are you aware that you are 6 times more likely to be saved by a gun crime than to be hurt by a gun crime?
Not sure about Rhino yet. Something along the shoreline.
Yeah. So there was a study done in Florida.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull that up in a few minutes. But essentially, what it did
I'll update you when I make progress.
is they did a so. By the way, just so that way I can assure you that this is still accurate to the rest of the United States. This study was later done, about a year later, done on the rest of the United States, just to be sure, because Floridians are kind of crazy, so we don't really have any idea over whether we can trust this or not. The point
Yeah,
is,
because each state's different.
yeah, but this proved to be close, pretty much the same for every other state.
So an estimation of a 6 times rate of being
No.
unharmed.
No. So here's how. So the reason I say 6 times is because basic math. But here's what the statistic was. In Florida, there were roughly 500,000 gun crimes a year. That's not good. That is definitely not good. But you want to hear something else? There were 3 million crimes stopped by citizens with guns. That is 6 times. So you were, and that was statistically proven, you were 6 times more likely to be saved by a gun than harmed by one.
So we're talking about gun safety controversy now?
We're all over the place, my friend.
Mm-hmm. That actually makes me think about that, one Mike Bloomberg ad I saw. I think he...
Let's not talk about Mike Bloomberg.
I know, he's all over the place, but let me just say that...
He fucking is!
Yeah, there was this ad of this woman whose son was killed defending people from
I
gun
saw
crime.
that ad. I saw that ad. He was so into football. He loved football. Well, to be entirely fair, that woman lived in the hood, from what I saw the ad. Yeah, your son's gonna get fucking killed by a gun if you live in the hood. Seeing as
it's a high chance. Doesn't necessarily mean it will happen, but it is bound to happen to someone.
Yeah, so
it just happened to be that
so,
one person.
Trust me, so the reason criminals are called criminals is because they commit crimes.
Mm-hmm.
If you ban a gun, and there's a criminal who wants a gun, they're still gonna get a gun, just illegally. They don't get guns legally now, anyway, because there's a record that ties them back to the crime. Like,
I believe taking away gun rights will actually increase the crime rate because criminals already illegally take guns.
Because you see,
Plus,
the thing
what
is,
about
the internet?
Also, what will happen to the officers that own guns? You know.
Well, you see, officers would still be allowed. It's more taking away citizen gun rights.
Mm-hmm. But I believe it is under one of the amendments where people have the right to own a gun.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it's about, but it's about having the right to defend their property with a gun.
It was made. Yeah. No, it wasn't just. No, it had nothing to do with property. Actually, it was more so. It was for a militia. So if in any circumstances, you would. So back then, a militia was a civilian group, a militarized civilian
the definition
group.
of.
Yeah, it was an unofficial militarized civilian group, and the U.S. had those to fight against Britain. So
which is why that amendment was created.
So that way
they could have those militias.
Yeah, that should always apply. And
Yeah,
some people may argue
especially if
it
we're
doesn't.
in a war that is close to home in America, you know?
Plus, you always need it to defend yourself. Some people may argue, but it doesn't say anything about assault weapons. This was made in This was made in roughly the mid 1780s. Assault weapons were not a thing. This applies to all weapons, not just flintlock pistols and muskets. All weapons, assault weapons, AR-15s, a fucking Glock 17, all
No,
weapons,
it would make
with a few
it would
exceptions. With a few exceptions, like I'm
like
not
rocket
gonna,
launchers.
I'm not gonna be walking into my friend's house and just see in his garage his dad has a fucking like rocket launcher. Like, would it be cool if we could own rocket launchers? Yeah, pretty fucking badass.
Yeah, but that would be like
I think that might
really
need a little.
dangerous.
I think that should probably need maybe. I think that civilians should probably be able to attain them, but I think that should require like a lot.
that would be a ton of paperwork and a lot of money.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you would-
that's.
And for whenever, and I would believe that if someone did own a rocket launcher, whenever it went off, they were at complete fault. The person that owned the weapon would be at complete fault for that.
Well, that's already kind of how it works now.
Yeah.
But point is, you should never have your right infringed. Like, people try their best to protect every single fucking amendment. Don't just protect one amendment because you like it. If you're gonna protect one amendment, you have to protect all amendments, including the OG-10. If you're gonna try and protect, say, the First Amendment, you gotta protect the Second. You're gonna try and protect the Eighth Amendment, you gotta protect the Second. You don't want people living in, you don't want militarized civilians living in your, quartering in your house without your permission. Then I am allowed to keep my fucking gun. Well, at least when I'm 21. So that's what I said. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what the fuck?
I mean, it would make sense if like I honestly wouldn't be that upset if they took away like the right to own like assault weapons, you know. I mean, it's still upsetting because that is technically infringing the amendment, but it would make sense like only being able to keep maybe like pistols and rifles, you know. Semi-auto
honestly,
rifles.
Like, I think that you should be able to keep everything up to an automatic right, any fucking weapon you want, with a few exceptions here and there. But otherwise,
Maybe
every
like
single weapon,
customized weapons you could keep if
yeah.
they're like specifically designed, customized.
I think you should be able to bring into your home an AK-47.
Yeah, you'd be able to own one, but you're never able to like take it out to public or something.
Yeah, you can like take it out into a range, or you can use it
Yeah.
on some motherfucker who decides, hey, I'm gonna break in.
Well, that depends on the state too. In
most
Washington, you would only ever do that if you believed that your life was in danger or you were in physical danger.
He had a gun, miss.
Like, you're not allowed to. I don't believe you're allowed to, really do much to the criminal unless you're the one in danger.
So one thing is, well, you're allowed to
In your home.
incapacitate them. But one thing you're not allowed to do is, this is illegal, and, you know, I'm actually very happy it is. If somebody breaks into your home, you are not allowed to hurt them with the intent to make them suffer without death. If you are going to shoot someone just so they can feel pain, not just so that way they won't, like, move towards you, but just so they can, like, feel pain, and this goes for everything, not just weapons. Just so they can feel pain, just so you can fill up your fucked up little fantasies, you fucking Jigsaw-esque motherfucker. That's illegal. That is illegal. Like, Mason, let's just say you broke into my home, just so you could steal some insulin from my fridge. If I shot you purposely in a place that I knew you would be in pain for, be in pain?
Even though I didn't do anything to you.
No, no, no. It doesn't matter if you did something to me. If I'm doing it just so you can feel pain, I'm not trying to kill you. Just trying to fucking make you feel all hurt, all this type of pain.
Mm-hmm.
That's illegal.
Now, if that happened without the intention of me suffering, then, like...
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. Like, if I shot you and you died, no, that'd be fine. Like,
Well, it won't be fine,
no,
because,
no,
you
it'd be
know,
illegal. You're dead.
it's
You
legal,
broke into my
but
fucking
it's
house.
not quote-unquote fine, you know?
I think it's pretty fine. So, one thing...
I mean, I don't think there's too many, but I'm pretty sure there are quite a few cases of people in different states, not this state, of killing people that
Oh,
come
yeah.
onto their property without
Yeah,
realizing it.
so... In Texas, it doesn't matter if you, like, break in. The second you go on their property,
They are able to shoot you,
they're able
as long
to
as you're on
shoot
their
you.
property.
Like, the second you go on your friend's property and his dad has a gun, don't piss off his dad. He can fucking kill you. But, like, you see, that's the thing.
Just pulls out a shotgun.
Shotgun. But, like,
That's terrifying, dude.
yeah. Like, honestly. Like, cause, so, you know Nick Way, right?
You,
He's in 8th grade. But, he goes there to Coopville. But point is, his mom told me the story about how, and I'm not gonna confirm whether this is real or not, but she told me the story about this foreign exchange student went to Texas. He did not speak the
yeah.
language very well. Accidentally
Yeah, I
stumbled
remember
upon
hearing that.
someone's property. Bam!
Mm-hmm.
He
Yeah, I
did.
heard that story.
Point is, don't die.
Need to check out the reservoir.
Don't be stupid and go onto other people's property, even if you want that marijuana.
Fucking dumbass. But yeah, you see, that's something. Like, yeah. What else are we talking about?
Let's talk about extraterrestrials.
Attention units. We are receiving reports.
How do you think our government would react to aliens?
West Village.
I feel like when aliens do come to Earth, no matter what happens, I think there will be conflict. I
Oh,
honestly
most
think there will
fucking
be
definitely.
conflict.
Space
Because
oil,
so
space oil, space oil.
so there are several things that could happen. So one, it could be the aliens are attacking as in trying to invade. Two, they could be trying to bring peace, and then some guy in Texas is like, get off my property, bang, you know?
Space oil.
And then they wage war like that. Or maybe they come and we think it's the government thinks it's a threat, so they attack them. Or
So,
maybe at first we make peace, but then there starts then there's like peaceful rallies. These rallies
So-
and stuff.
I kinda know
No.
aliens exist.
I mean, it's obvious there has to be.
Well, yeah, it's physically impossible for aliens not to exist. You wanna know why?
Because bacteria.
Yeah, no, it's
I
because
mean,
the
it's
universe. No,
possible.
you know why it's impossible? You know why it's impossible for them to not exist? Because the universe is infinitely
vast.
expanding. No matter how, it's always expanding. So therefore, at one point aliens will have to exist because bacteria will
even if they don't, even if like they're just bacteria as we speak, there has to be some kind of extraterrestrial life out there, even if it's like the farthest away as it can possibly be, and we have no idea about it until we have the technology to move far, far away and be able to recycle our compost and, you know, so, and keep on going forever. You know?
Yeah. And due to the fact that the universe is ever expanding, that means at one point it will have to produce it will produce some it will produce a planet that will house a bacteria. It will produce a bacteria on an asteroid or something. It will produce that. It will produce some sort of living organism. Doesn't
There
matter how
will be a
small.
planet full of Shreks.
Technically, that could exist because the universe is infinite. Therefore, at one point, that
And as
will
we get
exist.
into the idea of the universe, there's also multiverses of how every single decision we make has a different outcome to it.
I love New York.
I believe in that theory. Though
So
it is
I think a multiverse could exist. There's a really
Yeah.
weird theory out there that, like, I don't believe this one because it's kind of stupid. That ghosts are just so. The idea is that the multiverse, there are parallel universes next to us, and ghosts are just little bits that are just kind of are fucking universe splitting
And
open
in
for
a
a second.
way, multiverses is kind of like the time stream. There is the multiverse where someone goes back in time, and that would so like multiverse.
Gotta be faster.
Essentially, if we access the ability to go back in time, we are creating a multiverse. That is what we're doing. As it creates a separate timeline from which we are currently in. If we create, it's really like.
Have you ever heard of the grandfather paradox?
The grandfather paradox, where like
You go back
your
in
own...
time, you go, so imagine this, you go
Oh
back in time,
yes,
you
yes.
kill your
Go
father.
back in time, kill your grandfather.
No,
Kill
no.
your grandfather.
Let's start simple. You go back in time and you kill your father. Therefore, you can never be born. But therefore, you will never go back in time and kill your father. Therefore,
Yeah.
you are born. But then you go back in time and kill your father. It's
That
an
within
infinite
itself
cycle.
becomes. That within itself will end up being an eternal loop that will essentially,
This started off
by
with us,
definition,
like,
crash reality.
So this started off with us, like, creating ideas as to what, like, I wrote down video game lore, overrated things, deep web content, and then I just drew a picture.
The whole point of this is to be like the question exists. Like my idea of creating this podcast was essentially
Okay,
like
so I'm
questioning
just gonna tell
our
you this now.
reality.
The podcast
essentially.
was never your original idea.
It was not my original idea, but my idea as what to do in the podcast.
Yeah,
That was
'cause
my
me and Nathan,
perspective.
we
on
thought
it.
of a podcast one day. Let's just do it, and we did it. A very good podcast episode. We talked about Ted Bundy.
Nice.
But, like, I feel like this episode we, like, started off with a dose of politics and now we're going into more extraterrestrial stuff. So the
Yeah,
thing with
that's what I wanted
paradoxes-
to do.
The thing with
So.
paradoxes is once they begin, they're so, once you avoid them and they don't happen, is that a paradox in itself?
Technically, I would say.
So a paradox is just an overcomplicated circle.
It is.
That's-
It is a perfect circle, as it loops within itself and cannot be stopped from looping. And
But yeah,
you can't, cut it without creating a whole loop on its own.
so actually, let's take the Avengers Endgame route with us. Let's assume that Avengers Endgame take on time travel was correct. If you go back in time, you do something, it'll affect your current present. That, they said, no, that's not true. What actually happens is your future is that past, therefore it can't be affected. And when you go back and when you continue, you're simply just continuing your future and it can't be affected. So assuming that's correct, this also ties into Back to the Future. In Back to the Future, they mentioned two separate timelines. The timeline where Biff gets the sports almanac and becomes one of the richest men on Earth, and the timeline where he doesn't and he ends up cleaning the McFly's cars for a living.
And yet, because he made that change, he stayed the same for some reason.
He didn't. Well, he didn't because when they went back to the future,
Huh.
well, they never actually went back to the future
They went to it. They essentially, because of the action they took, they technically moved to an alternate dimension, in which,
They did.
if that happened,
So
that's
travel,
literally.
So time travel isn't really time travel; it's more dimension traveling. Because once you time travel and you change something, you're just making another dimension.
You're making a you are, like I said, you're creating more multiverses of which, where if you go back in time, you change something that is very vital into the future, then you create a different multiverse in which, and for like that to happen, then this happens. But if you instead did this change, then this would happen, and you just. It's like a telltale game, you know? You keep on making decisions, and as you make the decisions, you create your...
No telltale games, no telltale games. But, like, you see, the thing is, when you time travel, assuming that Avengers Endgame's way of looking at it is correct, when you time travel, you don't change your own future, you just made a new one. Your future is still there, and you could just go back to it by traveling further back. Confusing, right? If the kids at school actually watch this podcast, they're just gonna be like, okay, I watched this politics section, I'm a little offended. Okay, I watched this section here, I'm a little confused. What do I feel? But you see,
I win.
Haha, you fallen for the ultimate.
Seriously though, like, can you imagine, like, you're just sitting here, we're doing one of the podcasts, and then yourself suddenly comes through the door and shoots you.
I looked at my door instinctively.
Seriously, if that happened, if you go back in time and kill your younger self, like, that within itself is really weird. Is that technically suicide, actually? I think that's technically suicide.
Technically suicide, because you're killing yourself. But you want to know something that I find kind of confusing?
Mm-hmm.
Here's something I want to know. If you attempt to go back in time and kill yourself, and you kill and you kill the future you trying to kill yourself before they can, and
then time just continues.
But didn't you just create another multiverse? Because eventually
you
you're
did,
gonna have
because
to be that
you're...
you. But what if you're able to kill the you that killed you?
Because you know what happens.
Yeah, precisely. Okay, this is getting confusing. I think we can end the podcast there for the night.
Okay.
This might have been a short one, but you know, I'm just getting back into the podcast game, so like, nobody watched, but you know, probably gonna get some views after this goes up, like, but, you know, God, I think this is very confusing. We gotta talk about this again sometime, and bye.